Good evening, everyone. This is the beginning of the Committee of the Whole for November 4th. And we commenced the meeting at 6:30 p.m. And first item is the adoption of the agenda, moved by Councillor Gorell, seconded by Councillor Kelman, that the agenda be adopted as circulated and that procedural bylaw be waived and the in-camera agenda item be moved to the end of the meeting. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it is carried. Next item is declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Does anybody have an interest to declare? I have no hands up, so we'll move forward to delegations presentations. And this evening we have Cataraqui Conservation Authority, their budget presentation this evening. And we have David Ellingwood, who is the general manager for the Cataraqui Conservation Authority, that will present and provide council with an overview of the proposed draft budget. So please come to the podium, Mr. Ellingwood, and we'll be attentive to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Greetings to council. I'm David Ellingwood. I've been general manager of Cataraqui Conservation since the end of April, so just over 6 months. Living in Gananoque and enjoying exploring this area very much. We've been out to Marble Rock several times, the islands, the parkway, so lots of pretty places and leads in 1,000 islands to enjoy. I like your building here, the maps and a lot of the good historic information that you have here. It's very well done building. So I've come here to provide a short amount of information about our draft budget for Cataraqui Conservation. So I'll switch to the presentation now and just get this started. Do I need to do anything to share? Or is it good?
Yeah, should be able to share.
There we go.
Can we also turn on his camera at the screen? Thank you.
Thanks for your help. A couple slides here. Okay. So tonight I'm just going to talk a bit about the programs and services we offer and some of the factors going into our budget development. It includes staff compensation and capacity, our administration facility. We moved into a new office this year. Work on capital assets and management program for those, and federal and provincial funding and their impact on our budget as well. So under the Conservation Authorities Act, there's different requirements when it comes to budgets and our member municipalities. So one thing that the province brought in fairly recently has been the requirement for service level agreements. So we have these agreements with all 11 member municipalities, and it helps to inform municipal levies. So Category 1 are essential programs, ones that are protecting life, property, corporate functions. Category 2 would be municipal-based services. So these would be for example, a couple of our municipalities asked the Conservation Authority to help them manage their water control structures, so that we don't have that here in Leeds and the Thousand Islands. And then category 3, these are locally supported services. So these are the ones that our member municipalities have agreed are, while they're not to the core service of the Conservation Authority, they're important services and they want us to undertake these. So we do have agreements with our member municipalities, and that covers things like some of our local watershed monitoring and education and public programming and land stewardship. The apportionment is distributed among our participating municipalities as per the agreements, and we'll see that in the next couple slides here. So by the numbers, we have a draft 2025 operating budget of $6.82 million. There is a lot of internal recoveries in there, so the actual number of money to be brought in is just under $5.5 million. And in terms of changes in our budget, there's an increase of about 3.5% in the municipal levy amounts between the general and combined special levies. Plus, there was a 1% levy that was agreed to by our board for the new administration facility. So renting is a little bit more expensive than owning, except for the repair costs that were mounting up, which is why we moved to a new facility this year. And we also have a 1% for a staff position in the development review. So at first, this was funded from reserves and a little bit of levy, and we're working through a 3-4 year phase in of that. We're about halfway through that phase in to have this additional development review position. So overall for municipalities, we're looking at a 5.5% increase in levy. Our actual expenses are up about 7.5%, which reflects inflationary impacts, staffing, compensation. And the funding for our budget, about 47% is coming from our municipal levies, 21% is internal recoveries, 11% fees, 4% provincial. We are using some reserves, and then other is further self-generated funds. When we have our municipal levies, we apportion these. There's a formula. There's a couple options in the Conservation Authorities Act. Here we use the current value assessment. We get those figures from M&R each year. So this year, Leeds and the Thousand Islands, it's 6.22%, similar around to Loyalist. There's other ones that are much smaller. And then City of Kingston has over 60%, being the largest center in the area. So in terms of your municipality, there's a few different categories here. So our category 1, the core and corporate services, we're looking at just under an $8,000 change in the amount of levy for your municipality this year. The next one on the list there is special levy for category 1. This would be for your support of the boat launch outlet. And not much change in the value of that request there, and that goes towards directly towards the maintenance of that facility. The next one is water control structures. It's a special levy that we use for operation and maintenance of water control structures. These would be for your municipality ones that assist in managing the flows in the Gananoque system. And then the final one is category 3, locally supported services. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is for programming, events, education, other water quality testing and stewardship. So overall, just over $8,000 request in addition to what you provided in 2024. Percent wise, that's about 4.88%. So it's less than the average 5.5% of our overall budget for levies for your particular municipality. We do look ahead a little bit. So Cheryl Ryder's our head of finance, and she's done some projections ahead, kind of looking at some of the 1% additions that we have worked into our budget and what might happen with inflation and some of our other activities that we have. So we're looking at lower amounts in terms of levy increases in the coming years. We also have a capital works. So generally we create reserves for our different business units, the different structures, pieces of infrastructure that we have, and we utilize those reserves to pay for capital repairs. There's a few things to note overall in the budget. The development review numbers have been pretty steady. It's been very busy. I think enforcement activities are more this year. We're also dealing with a fee freeze. So the minister at the end of the last couple of years has told us that we cannot increase the fees that we charge for plan input and development review. So you can see that very quickly you start to fall behind with cost of living, trying to keep up with staff salaries. What we've done in this year, we are proposing and have circulated already an increase to the fees, basically a cost of living adjustment. But in terms of the budget, I didn't include those fee increases because there's a fair likelihood that those fees will be frozen again for 2025. So it's starting to put us behind, and essentially means we have a choice of using levy or reserves to top up that part of our business, which is a very core and essential part of what we do. So we also have static provincial dollars. Source protection is fully funded, which is good. It's been that way since since it started back in the mid-2000s. But we also have a program that funds repairs to our water control structures. The dollar amounts there haven't changed in 30 years. So we're dealing with aging infrastructure on our water control structures. That's coming into play with our capital works. We have an asset management plan, in particular for water control structures that we're completing in the next month or so here. We already have a draft that went to our board, but looking ahead, we need to really take a good look at the reports that have been generated about our structures and what needs to be done in terms of capital repairs and maintenance. We don't want to get into any situation where there's a risk to the structures, which is a risk to the public. So it is a very important program. I think one thing that provincially we can do is lobby for additional funding for that repair program to at least have it keep pace with inflation and not have the dollar value continue to erode in that grant program. On the brighter side, there's we've heard of several different federal programs that are coming up. In our budget, we show $0 that of this at this time for federal programs, but there is potentially some money for floodplain mapping that we're looking at in the Kingston area. We did use that kind of money to do along the the entire St. Lawrence Lake Ontario shoreline in our jurisdiction. That's just coming into implementation right now. And yeah, so overall, for your municipality, 4.88% is what we're looking at as an increase. And the main pressures that we have are static provincial funding, frozen fee rates in our development review, and looking ahead, taking a look at our asset management and what that might mean for a capital program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so questions from council? Go ahead, Mr. Gurrell. Give you first crack. You sit on the
Okay.
board and then we'll go to Mr. Maybe.
And through you, your worship, I just want to point out, and I think David can back this up, when we were looking at the slide that showed apportionment, and it showed that our township was 6.2%. And I'll make the example, Rideau Lake showed at something like 3 point. The reason is they are split between Cataraqui and Rideau Valley. And that probably is the same with a couple others. So it looked well out of balance. Thank you.
If I can just ask you to stop sharing your screen and then I'll be more visible to the public, please, and thank you. There we go. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. When you talked about the forecast over the next 2025 to 2028, it alluded to lower amounts percentage-wise. But if this freeze disappears and you're able to come out of that freeze, at which after the next election will probably be that date, do you see those percentages going up any large amount or just small amounts?
Through your worship. So if the freeze comes off, then that would allow us to, we wouldn't necessarily catch up. I don't think the development community or the public would want us to try to catch up with the amounts that we've fallen behind immediately. So no, we can't just suddenly put in a 8 or 10% change in our fees. I don't think there's an appetite for that. So I think we'd, with that said, I don't think they'd get any worse than that, right? They would say about as they are.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Follow up. So the pace would be slowed so that over time you would get there, but it would be, will that be able to be mandated into a document for you? Because we know that's going to happen at some point.
Through you. So we circulate our fee schedule each year, and same for as most conservation authorities, we try to keep it at cost living adjustment. So I think that's what we'll be looking at. And for me, I'm looking for additional ways to fund positions so that it doesn't come back as levy increases. So if there's ways to utilize staff in other programs that bring or grants could utilize their skills in small areas, and that would catch us up in those dollar amounts.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Footy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Mr. Ellington, the 2025 projects you have coming up, any of those involved in this township, Leaders of Thousand Islands?
So we do have a couple of projects on the dams. So like both dams are scheduled for some small maintenance items. So that's part of it. Other than that, we have just the regular maintenance of the boat ramp. I think there's nothing in particular for other items.
Okay.
Follow.
And a follow-up, if I may. Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Cataraqui Conservation, was there any change to your wetland mapping in the past year? I know 3, if I'm not mistaken, conservation authorities in Eastern Ontario did so to much pushback. The province stepped in, rolled it back such that they were not allowed to change. Did that happen here?
To your worship. So no, that didn't affect Cataract Conservation. The three conservation authorities in the east, Raisin, Rideau, and South Nation. Going back about almost 20 years was when nearly all the other conservation authorities in the province went through a change to the wetland mapping. So we've had that in place for almost 2 decades in the Cataraqui watershed. The other ones, for whatever reason, politically at the time, they decided not to incorporate those same changes. And when they tried to do it at this point, there were, I guess, identified some problems with the mapping, and it politically they put a hold on that until they figure out a better system.
So if I may, thank you, Your Worship, through you. So you're saying there was intent to change this area as well, your jurisdiction, or the province put a hold on everyone, not just the three?
Through your worship, it was only the three. The three were the only ones that were had a program to update their mapping. Ours have been that way for 20 years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, follow up? I thank you for your presentation. A couple of things that I noticed that I just want to just go back to. One was you were adding a person to the development review team. That's one of the positions you're trying to add. I would assume that we are a heavy user based on the number of applications comparative to some of the other municipalities. I'd be interested to know how many applications we submit, not just the ones that we get permits from. Like, I know our permits are about the same, if not higher, for building, and they all have to be circulated to you, as well as planning applications. So do you have any sort of concept of how many applications you're receiving from TLTI in a year, whether they go anywhere or don't, but just the number? Because if, let's say, we submit 1,000 a year, and someone like one of the other municipalities submit 300, we're definitely going to get the benefit of that additional development review team, because I know it's overwhelming with that. So I just don't know if you have any of those numbers handy.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so I asked Mike Dakin, he's our supervisor for the development program. So in terms of the numbers, Leeds and 1,000 Islands is close to the highest number of permits in the Cataraqui region, rivaling Kingston.
Rivaling Kingston, yeah,
yes.
where our portion of the budget is 6.22.
6.2%, yeah. So you're 1/10 of what Kingston is in terms of the apportionment, but a significant amount of development applications are processed through our department.
But on the other side of that, we're also driving your revenue because of the permit costs. Okay. So I was very pleased to hear about the potential for applying for federal grants, because I know that the feds are coming forward with a number of programs. So hopefully that is successful for you as well. The no fee increase, and that is across the province. That's not just for Cataraqui, correct?
That's correct.
So, so is that something that you require us to lobby the provincial government on your behalf? Like, I realize that Conservation Ontario, your parent organization, are probably lobbying for that, but I don't know. And this is something that we could probably chat offline, Brock, Mr. Grail, that I know that Roma is coming up, and some of the challenges that we're all facing in municipal government and the agencies is just where are the dollars coming from and how we all share the burden and the load. And if there was something that Conservation Ontario needed help from, then we might be able to lend a political hand, so to speak.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I have no further questions. So thank you again for coming and presenting. We really appreciate it. And obviously your budget will be factored into our budget deliberations going forward, which are happening in December. So thank you. Okay, we will move forward with number 5 on the agenda, which is Lou Jeffries agreement. And the motion reads, moved by Counselor Lackey, seconded by Counselor Gorell. The committee of the whole recommends that council authorize staff to enter into an annual financial contribution agreement with the town of Gananoque for the Lou Jeffries Arena for a period of 4 years in the amount of blank per year, with an annual inflation adjustment commencing January 1st, 2026. So there was a missing thing on the end of it, just for the specifics of the amount and that the inflationary, which was in the report. So. Okay, so the motion is on the floor, up for discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Conlon.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I don't really think that we have a lot more information than we had in June from the town of Gananoque. A lot of the questions that we raised then about, were they looking for other sources of revenue or sponsors or anything like that? We haven't got any answers that way. And I find for myself, it's really difficult to make this decision when I don't know what our overall budget for recreation programming and facilities is going to look like for next year. And for me, that's a big factor. I had really hoped to have a meeting with our recreation working group, with our new recreation coordinator, to talk about that, just to look at, I think it needs to be looked at as a big picture. And so I don't see that we're any further ahead than we were in June from my perspective. And I just feel like, we have whatever X amount of dollars to spend on recreation programming and facilities. We have to spend it on the facilities within our township. We have to maintain our parks. There might be some improvements needed. There's going to be work being done in the Sealy's Bay Community Center, the old fire hall, perhaps next year. There's going to be other things. We already spend some dollars on programming within the township. And then, as it said in the June report, we contract out some recreation programming, and that's what this could be seen as. But as I've said several times before, there are a lot of people in this township using other programs and facilities. And I'm very concerned still that we are not spending these recreation dollars equitably amongst our residents and across the township. So none of my concerns from the spring have been allayed.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to you, through to our CAO, I guess. As far as the working group, I appreciate all the hours and work that was put in. Is there going to be a more fulsome report as to, the information that you absorbed? As far as, how you came up again with the number that you used, the 158,000 and your 2% per year afterwards. So I guess how did we end up at that starting point? Other than the obvious, that's where we're leaving off.
Go ahead, CAO.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Director Holliday over the summer met with his counterparts at GAN while I was away on medical leave. And based on the meetings that we had as a working group up to that point where I was still involved actively, the picture became clear that the arena is aging, everything aging, expensive to run, on and on and on. There was the survey that overwhelmingly showed that people supported the arena. And when we came back in June, we summarized pretty much everything, and we were given a direction by council to set an amount for council's contribution. So we looked at, we received additional information. There was more discussion about their capital plan. There was more discussion about their operating costs. And it boiled down to, well, that's great. They're all numbers. And at the end of the day, do we care what the numbers are? Or are we happy to say we're in to the tune of X number of dollars? Gananoque, make it work. We'll help you with seeking sponsorships. We'll help you with fundraising. We'll help you identify grant opportunities. We'll write letters of support for all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, Councillor Lackley, as you've been pointing out all along, it's their asset. So we're taking the position that whatever it costs to operate that facility or keep it standing, we need to pick a number that we're happy participating in. And so we looked at it like we're in there for $154,000 now. It's a set amount. We need some certainty on costs. I don't know what the next, I guess Dave could tell you what the next year of capital requirements are and what the operating expenses are and what they're projecting for revenues and all that sort of thing. I would imagine GAN knows exactly what all that stuff's going to be or what they're planning because they're setting their budget same as we are. But at the end of the day, do we need to get caught up in all of that? Do we need to be managing or helping to co-manage or be up to our necks in it with them when it's their facility? And so I see it really much as pretty much that we are contracting out a certain level of recreation programming to GAN. And what we're trying to do is set how much is that worth to the township. So if we don't participate, if the tipping point for all of this is $154,000 or whatever, if that's really going to scupper the arena, what are the alternatives? It's financially unfeasible for us to build an arena. And I was thinking about it today. If somebody came out of the weeds and said, we'll build you an arena, we'll donate it. Well, then we're on the hook for, I don't know, pick a number, $1 million a year in operating costs. Is that something that we want to be spending? I don't think anybody has the appetite for that. We built outdoor rinks last year. I think we were open for a grand total of a day. One of them was open for a day. So we can't count on the weather to help us at least be able to build something for kids to play, have a skate and play some pickup hockey on. So at the end of the day, there was a lot of thought in this, and we came away saying, what's the number that we're comfortable at? And if council's comfortable at 0, or if council's comfortable at 300,000, what have you, I think 154, it's where we've been for the last 2 years. We'll build up a little cost of living increase for them at year after year. And we know what we're doing for the next 4 years, and we'll help them, and hopefully the situation will get better, but that building's not getting any younger. The costs of managing it or maintaining it are increasing. We have a capital plan that goes out 30 years. So, and those costs are based on today's dollars, or 2017 or 2018 dollars or something. So it's an expensive thing to have, but I think the gut check here is, do we want to be part of this or don't we? And if we don't, are we prepared to see it go away?
Just going back to Councillor Kelman's point, so a couple of your questions were in regards to sponsorship and advertising type dollar. And I can't recall off the top of my head, Director Holiday, do you recall how much that they had sold in advertising and sponsorship? I'm not sure.
Sorry, through you. I don't think that we ever talked about the value of the
I know that they
sponsorships.
do. I just don't recall the number. I think it was discussed briefly at one point in time, but to your point, Councillor Kelman, if that's some data that you want to see before, I think that's a fair question and a fair ask. The other thing that was shared with us when we were talking, which was their capital plan, but the way that this report has been presented is that we would not be contributing to any capital at all. We would not be, we would be part of a joint rec committee, which this would be included overreaching over, guiding all recreation, this being part of it, but that we would not be in the weeds with them, telling them what we think we can contribute towards capital this year or not last year or next year. So I think that Gananoque would be fine sharing that, but we would have to double check because I'm not sure if that was a document that was already made public. But before a decision is made, I'm sure that we can get that information to you. So I just wanted to get that out there, Director Holiday. So I have Councillor Grell and then I have Deputy Mayor Fody.
Thank you, and through you, your worship. I remember quite well the options that we were given regarding moving forward with the Lou Jeffries project. And this seems to fall in line with what we decided at that council meeting, that we were comfortable, as the CAO has pointed out, with a firm dollar amount. And rather than each year renegotiate with this capital operating and everything else. So there's nothing new here to me, not one word in there. But the mayor just raised something that I would like clarification on. The original 154,000 or whatever, I always sort of remember that being kind of split between capital and operating. That may be wrong. I might have the wrong
There
thought
was
on
there
that.
was a portion that was allocated towards capital.
Okay, so so is this clearly stated that this doesn't go toward capital, or are they free to use it however they wish? Because that can of worms opens up. You know, we're giving them a set amount of money that makes our budgeting easier, but are we comfortable, as Councillor Lackey has said, it's not our building. So do we stipulate, do we open that up and have a little discussion on it or not? Thank you.
I'll recognize the CAO.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, that would be something that we would have in the agreement. I didn't want to get too in the weeds for the purpose of the report, which I should give credit to Director Holiday for actually writing. But yes, that would be something that we would just simply specify that the amount is to be used for operating.
I think that the other item before we go to Deputy Mayor Fody, the other item that may want to be added to this report is what the actual operating costs were for 2023. Because our previous agreements that were done annually or every other year, or however often, it seems like we're talking about this almost every year. So, but the 154,000 is not 50% of the operating costs. Their operating costs were well in excess of that. So to the point that Councillor Grell just made, talking about whether or not these funds would be used towards capital, the reality is that we're not really holding our own on the 50% of the operating that was originally sort of what it was based on. Go ahead.
And it also avoids the whole, they can treat the facility as a whole. So the Gord Brown ice pad outside and the staff that spend their time, they don't have to get into trying to break down for us how much electricity was used to make ice in the arena versus all that. So it streamlines it for GAN, that they can just look at the total costs to operate the facility without having to worry about, you know, oh gee, we got to apportion the Zamboni driver's time because they, you know, so it just makes it a cleaner thing for them.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Councillor Grell is correct. Part of that money was for operating, because when we had that discussion, whether it's the ice making, the lights on, the door swinging, for our residents, for all the above, there's a wear and tear for us to pitch in on. And something that I just noticed in my travels here the past week, if I threw out the name the Corral Center, I hardly doubt anybody at this room would know what I meant. I mean, the Ottawa Senators started there. That's not the name of the place now. Leon Center, very recently, it's now called Slush Puppy Arena. And last night or yesterday evening, traveling Deserano for a hockey game, I did a double take on a very busy highway at Napanee to see the Best and Bash Arena, not Strathcona Paper Center. I thought, okay. That led me to think, I want it on record. I knew Lou Jeffries well. I'm not suggesting we change the name of the arena, but I think the operating board, if you will, whoever's going to direct the forward movement of the Lou Jeffries Arena, needs to take a broader look at some of the real corporate players in our area. Not our township, not the town of Gananoque, all of them. And they perhaps could put one name on there as a sponsorship, not the name of the arena, as a platinum sponsor, or if you wish, put 2 or 4 names up there. Have a chat with these corporate citizens. They may be glad to step forward. I'm not going to name those citizens. We all know who the big players are in our area. I think we're really missing out. Other areas have come to that aha moment because that's exactly what they're doing. Thank you.
Director Holliday, did you happen to have those access to the actuals for 2023? I know that we were provided those at one of the meetings.
I don't have the exact numbers, but at our last meeting, their operating expenditures were around the 600,000 mark. That's not considering the revenues. And then it was an additional $150,000 in expenditures for capital as well.
On top of the 600.
Correct.
So, but to the point that Councillor Kelman has made, if we were able to not table this discussion, to defer it to the next meeting and get a couple of these key details that would help other people see some of the further details for clarity, but that the way that the motion has come forward is that we need to pick a number, but it would be strictly a contribution. It would not be for capital or for operating. It's just what the township would contribute. But it would be, I think, advantageous for the council to see what the net was after revenue. Because I think that's where originally the originally started out at what, 68,000? 56?
Very low.
Very low. And obviously the cost of things have gone up considerably, but knowing what the costs are to run these arenas, certainly not, as the CAO indicated, is probably not something we want to get in the business of. So go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
I guess looking at the stats around use and everything else, I would, I'm one that would look at it a little skeptically based on the amount of money that you're considering putting it into it. The other part of the context, and I thought that's where Councillor Kelman was going, in the context of what we invest generally as a township in recreation programs. Whereas this, in the big picture, this is not an investment in a recreation program. This is propping up an ailing building with an operational cost that's out of line. And it's because of its age. But on the other hand, they seem to have the capacity to put in another rink. So
That was done with community dollars. not
well,
with the town.
it doesn't really matter. It's their land. It's should have some control over what the heck's going on. So here we are looking at this, and I'm not seeing a program in the context of a program, because this is not a program investment. This is supporting a building that we don't own. So I think we need to see, and just so I'm not misinterpreted, I really appreciate the work that everybody on staff has done to try to tease out these numbers. But at a certain point, we're not going to get the whole picture, and we write a check. It won't matter what we write the check for. They're going to use it for whatever they want to use it for once they have the check. So I'm not accusing them of doing anything. I'm just saying, you write the check, you can tell them don't use it for capital. They're going to do what they want to do with it. We would, let's face it. This is our jurisdiction. We have to make decisions in that context. But for me, if I'm seeing something that's 161,000, what's our overall investment in township recreational activity? Let's look at that first. That's the first point. The second point is, we all read the budget pressures memo that we received from our treasurer, and so much of our required expenditure is completely out of our control. We just had a presentation from the Conservation Authority. It's up. It's all very explainable and understandable, but at what point do we have to say enough is enough? Because at some point, we're going to start disappointing people on the things they like to see. We're going to say, well, we're putting it in the roads or we're trying to keep the buildings from falling down. But that's not what people look for. And we all know that. So I think I would like to see this in the context of our overall investment in discretionary spending in general, but specifically aligning this cost with what we anticipate spending for the things we do in Jesse Street, things that go on in Linters or over in Sealy's Bay. And then it's much easier to look at it and say, well, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Not against it. I just need context. Thank you.
So go ahead, see.
Thank you, Worship. And not to steal your thunder, I think the comments are very helpful to us. I would, not that it's my decision, but if council or committee of the whole would like to defer the matter to council next week, we can certainly pull together the information and get it dealt with as we are deep into building our budgets. And as I have been accused of in the past, to let this slide till the last minute so that council feels like I have tied their hands and they have nothing, but to do, but pass whatever number I stick in front of them. So I would like this to go to council next week.
Okay, so is council agreeable to defer this to next week with the additional information that's been requested? Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Thank you. Sorry, I would like to request more information if I could.
Okay.
Just it says here in the past discussions, there's been concerns expressed by council about the contributions, and it lists examples of communities who share,
Mhm.
but there's no numbers that go
Okay.
with them. So what does Athens get for what does Prescott? What kind of money are we talking here? It's great that it shows that there's a lot of cooperation going on, but it doesn't give us any
Any
money,
context?
any
Okay.
financial.
Thank you, Worship, through you. I can't recall if we talked about this or not at council or the committee of the whole, but we did look at a bunch of cost sharing agreements that ranged everywhere from pay-per-use subsidy, which we have with Athens and I think Westport, to something in, I believe it was Smith Falls, where it was so complicated, it requires a consultant to come in and determine what each year's contribution is. It was based on a weighted property assessed value. And I mean, you can make this as complicated as you want, or as simple as you want. So I can go through and do a summary of that and have that available for council if you wish.
So you're looking for just some additional information in those agreements for other municipalities?
Through you, your worship, after hearing that, not necessarily. I think the CAO just said it. We already have 2 agreements in place with Athens and Westport.
Yeah. But there- I
There's an
think-
example, which is
Right.
$200 a head.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I think all the discussion and what the points that have been brought up here this evening allow us to build out the report as it was submitted this evening to give additional information, plus in regards to rec programming altogether. Now, Alex, the new coordinator, she is quickly getting her feet wet and is looking to book a meeting with the working group in the near future. But I don't know how quickly, and in the context of, well, we're going to budget deliberations here in early December. So anyways, Councillor Grau, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Thank you. And to you, your worship, while we're revisiting the numbers and the rationale, I would like to ask that we are, after John Beddoes, the mayor of Gananoque, came and made a presentation to this board, I believe we passed a resolution that supports what's in front of us tonight. And I would just like, I could be proven wrong on that, but I would like that track back to that meeting with the presentation from Mr. Beddoes, and following that, give
There
or
was
take,
a
we passed a resolution, and I would like to know if we did or didn't, because that would be a confirmation bylaw would have been passed at the same time. So could we also get that and see if I'm wrong?
I want to say that was in June.
I don't
Or-
remember, but I remember a very good presentation from the Gananoque. We voted and we said, yes, we want to support them. And the same arguments were brought up at that meeting. This is nothing new that's being presented here tonight. I don't think there's anything new in here except for
Angie has
the,
the report in front of her. Oh, it was last year. Thank you for bringing that up. It'll be easier to
could
get
we
hold of.
confirm if there was indeed a resolution? Thank you.
We will do that. Okay, so with that, I'm going to ask for someone to move to defer this to the council. Go ahead, Councillor Croman. You're willing to defer? Okay, so I get my ducks in a row here. So deferral to council. And just a reminder, friendly reminder, council is Tuesday next week, November the 12th, because of the Remembrance Day. Okay, so Councillor Kelman is making that motion. I need a seconder, please. Seconder, oh, Rowe. Okay, thank you. Okay, voting on the deferral to the council November 12th meeting. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, and that is carried. Okay, thank you. Next item is 5.2, Emergency Management Program Committee. The motion comes forward from Councillor Gorell, seconded by Councillor Kelman, that the committee of the whole recommend that council grant 3 readings and final passage bylaw number 24-049, being a bylaw to appoint an emergency management program committee and repeal the appointment of an alternate community emergency management coordinator. Discussion on this motion. I have no hands up. I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item is to move in camera. So that's where the in camera, are we going? No, oh, it's, I'm sorry, my apologies. Unfinished business, is there any unfinished business? Oh, sorry, Brock, go ahead. Sorry, Councillor Grau. It was very informal, my apologies.
Through you. A month or so ago, it was mentioned that we might get an update on the drainage program. It was mentioned that it might happen in November. I just wonder, it's not on the agenda, but I wonder if, is there any update or is it being worked on? Would it be presented in December?
Councillor Director
Thank you.
Holiday.
Thank you, through your worship. We have been having conversations with the drainage consultant regarding this. Just trying to explore what the options are in terms of, moving forward, wholly or in part, what our requirements are. So once we have had an opportunity to go through all that information and then, put it on paper, then we'll bring it back to council. Shooting for December, though.
Okay. Okay, so we will look forward to that. Go ahead, Councillor Kelman.
Thank you, your worship, and for you, just an update in Lyndhurst on the bridge / speed limit / pedestrian safety. There has been traffic survey cables down at both ends of the village. And also there was a survey crew surveying the bridge itself last week. So there's actual
Movement.
work being done in the village.
Sorry, that was not to be self-appointed here. It's just, I'm glad to hear that there's some movement. And I'm sure that Councillor maybe has an ask.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Last meeting, we had a discussion about the CN crossings. And I know that I had a resident who had called the CAO to talk about his. And in that, they indicated that there was 54 crossings across Canada. So how many do we have in our township, if any?
Short answer is we're still waiting to get
Confirm.
that number.
Yeah.
I had a call with CN on Friday to discuss 2 crossings. One, a local farmer who the crossing was pulled out just as he was going to pull beans off of a field. That's been resolved. The other, your neighbor. I raised the concerns. CN basically has said that it's, they're not opposed to a crossing being there, but it needs to be subject to an agreement in place with costs and They are still working with Transport Canada about trying to either get exemptions for the 54 or deferral of the November 28th in
Yes.
effect date. So they're waiting just like we are. But I did repeat my request
Thank you.
to give us, how many are there?
Yeah.
I did ask them for private railway crossings that belong to CN and they have an obligation to maintain. They confirmed for me that they were bringing those up to standard. And they've done 3,000 crossings across Canada on this. And they confirmed that they're bringing them up to standard wasn't simply going and ripping them out. So that's one way of
Right.
getting sure in compliance. You don't have a crossing anymore.
Yeah.
So they said, no, that's not on the table. So it's kind of comforting on that side of things. But the problem is those private crossings that they meet a certain criteria, they're owned by the landowner, and then they're responsible for all the costs.
Yeah, well, that's what he indicated also, but the landlock in the situation of them getting to their property and using it as they wish, just like the farmer did, does become still a problem no matter what. And whether their delay is lengthy or not, it's still an issue. So, yeah.
So I'm just grateful that the government relations individual was willing and was fairly responsive in, I must say, in the last week when we did have the farmer looking for access to
Yes.
his bean crop, not to mention the other concerns that were brought forward. We have been a little hit and miss when it comes to CN and their response times.
Yes.
So, certainly wasn't same day service, but it got done. Thankfully in time for a combine to be able to cross and get the beans off before they ended up on the ground. Or God knows, rains, get stuck, what have you. And the litigation is ongoing as well with CN in regards to Highway 32 and the Beaver Dam. I think that was it from county. Okay. Any other unfinished business? No, I said unfinished business. So I am moving on to other business. Councillor Jameson, would you like to?
Yeah, I've raised this before, and because we were talking about the railroad, the province or the feds recently announced that they are considering dedicated route for the train from Quebec City through to Toronto via Peterborough and the northern route. And I've raised this before, and I would encourage our mayor to somehow convene a meeting of what I would call the waterfront crowd from Cornwall all the way through to Cobourg to discuss the impact on the southern route for passenger train travel. It's illogical to think that they will sustain a level of service on the lower, the southern route simply because the bulk of their business is Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa. That's where your volume is. You want traffic. So what I'm concerned about is a decline in capacity for passengers to move on the shoreline between Toronto and Montreal. And I have raised this before, I think 3 or 4 years ago, the first time when they started to discuss it. And this, of course, is looking out 15 years. So I guess we don't do that, but we should consider the ramifications for tourism and commerce and everything else along this belt line.
Okay.
So I would ask the mayor, not this council, but I'd ask you to consider taking that to some of your waterfront mayors, so to speak, see if anybody's talking about this, because I'm
I
not
will-
seeing anybody raise the flag anywhere, and it worries me.
So my first call would be to the president of AMO, who might know more about this because she's dealing with both provincial and federal counterparts, and she might have more of an update. So would be Robin Jones from Westport, because she would know more about the commuter train, whether it be what's going on with LRT in Ottawa and what is happening with Via Rail lines down here, and what the proposal would be in Peterborough, if it's stalled, if it's dead in the water, or if it's still moving ahead. I can probably get that information. If she doesn't have it, she'll know who to get a hold of. Okay,
Well, that's fine. I think you are, as they approach an election federally, this is one of the little baubles that's being thrown around. And if it moves ahead, it will have over a period of time, in my humble opinion, as a former constant user of that line,
Yeah.
rather a negative effect on the capacity on the lower line.
fair.
And I'm not sure where AMO is on this, because I know Smiths Falls wanted us to support their letter to the Fed saying this is a great idea. Well, of course it is. There's a stop Smiths Falls. But I think along the line, the southern line, you need to form a lobby of your own to make damn sure that VIA and the feds understand that that is an extremely important line for the economy of this region all the way through, unless we may end up being a GO train service. And I'm not sure whether that's good for us. So I leave it in your capable hands.
I shall report back. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Footy.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Further to Councillor Jameson's comments, recently CN had instructed VIA to slow their trains down to the tune of 20 kilometers an hour. If you see a VIA train going by a crossing now, it is noticeably different. I suspect, but I did not read and I went looking trying to find it. I suspect CN is being negatively impacted by having to park their freights to wait for fast moving VIA coming and going, and they spend too much time doing that on their line. So I think they're flexing their power and asking VIA, you slow down while our trains keep going. In essence, that's what they appear to be doing. So there's already a little friction started between CN and VIA. It might expedite what Councillor Jameson is referring to, but I highly doubt it's going to expedite it on the main line. I do have two other pieces of other business. Saturday afternoon, I purposely came down Highway 15 and drove the whole of County Road 13 through Kingston and onto the new rebuild on our portion. I was happy to see it was paved. But Your Worship, can you explain to us what happened at the county when we were told, where were we, 4 or 5 years ago, any redo of a county road would include paved shoulders? This was not the case. When they redone the paved shoulder, or paved road, I should say, excuse me, from the railway line here south of Lansdowne to County Road 2. I'm trying to think, did they go on the 401? Sorry, down the 401. We were told then that they didn't pave the shoulders then because it wasn't a total road redo. County Road 13 was a total road redo. Where are the paved shoulders and why aren't they done?
So it's a great question, and thank you for asking. This was a question that was asked when County Road 13 came up for rehabilitation. What had not inadvertently, it was purposefully, but I think it was a misconception at the county table because we all thought the same as well. But there was a subsequent report that came back for the active transportation. I think it's called active. It was a subsequent report which indicated certain routes and certain county roads that would be rehabilitated when redone would have widened shoulders, because there was a number of reasons, obviously the amount of traffic, but also the ability to do so. So for example, at County Road 13, it was not on the active transportation plan because we asked why the shoulders weren't being widened and redone. So the main reason being is that we don't own a big enough swath through there. We would have ended up having to buy a bunch of land from farmers we would have had to have it resurveyed. It would have been a project that would have taken a lot more time and effort. And because of the report for the active transportation plan that was approved, it removed some of the county roads that were more narrow and had less, why is my brain not working? No, the clearance from the middle of the road. Right of way, thank you. It didn't have a large enough right of way to actually expand. So place it, because I'm trying to think, there was another project that came up, same discussion happened at the county. And literally one or maybe two of the 10 mayors realized what had been done. And inadvertently, we passed it, approving the active transportation plan, but what it had done is it had removed certain routes that we did not have a big enough right of way. Go ahead.
Thank you for that explanation. One comment, county roads have a different weight bearing capacity than our municipal roads.
Correct.
Anybody that's had their eyes open in the last 10 or 20 years around here knows what's happening to agricultural equipment. It's getting massive. That massiveness also equates to weight bearing. What you're going to see happen, and that'll be a perfect example because of the amount of agriculture on that road, these large agricultural pieces of equipment will be riding on the very outside edge of that road and it'll be busted up, I guarantee you, within 10 years. And then what's the county going to do? Come back and redo it in 10 years? I highly doubt it. On your comments, I'd like the county to put forward a list of all the roads that they would consider as being paved shoulder roads. I'd like the public to see that.
It's in the active transportation plan and I can get that.
Okay.
So I'll just ask the clerk to remind me to do that. But to be fair, County Road 13 has been widened slightly to match up with what Kingston did.
Mhm.
It's certainly not paved shoulder wide. However, it's wider than what it was previously.
Mhm.
So it was the best compromise we could, and I fought very hard for that because originally they were just going to do replace like for like. And I was not a popular person that day at county, but I said, why are we doing this? If we have the room to widen it to the same standard that Kingston did, even though we didn't piggyback on their road work tender, which would have, I believe, been more cost effective. But anyways, they did widen it slightly. So to your point, hopefully that will help deter some of that initial breakdown. It's not going to avoid all of it because, like you say, the farm equipment is massive nowadays. But I'm also very I will be watching with great interest that road and the drainage on that road for the next coming years. And that's all I'll say about that.
Just one more comment on that same road. As much as the disappointment may be on the width of the road, I must give hats off as usual to George Tackerberry and Sons Company for doing their usual high quality job, which they did, and they expedited that whole road. I dare say they were on there total of a month, from the time they started and measured out all the culverts they had to change, made that happen to where they are today. I assume they'll be finished there if they haven't already today, but I know there's more work than that. One more piece on other business. A resident in the township was put out an ask through us to ask if we have any appetite to put up a veterans crossing, much like the Pride crosswalks. That individual sent an example of wide white bars on a crosswalk. In between the bars are large red poppies. In this case, there was 2, the next had 3, then 2. I think we should look into this. I know we can't get them on county roads. We can't even get the county road to widen there. So we'll stick to our own roads. And I was thinking a crosswalk perhaps down in Rockport to the Cenotaph, right there, crossways there. I'm sure we could get another one here or there in the township where it would be appreciated.
It might be an appropriate spot on our township street in Sealy's Bay where the Legion is.
Yes. And I don't know how you'd integrate one over here at Lansdowne at the memorial. It is on the Board of Education land and then County Road, but I'm sure there's places we could make one or two pop up at not a lot of expense.
Well, that is a great recommendation and could be as part of our future plans and maybe we do one a year for the next few years and that can all be contemplated. I have no idea what it cost us to do the Pride Crosswalk here on our property. Like, I don't know if it was $500 or 5,000. I have no concept of the paint. Oh, the CAO does know this, so I'll leave it.
We received a quote from our contractor who does line painting, and it was astronomical because it was a custom job and multiple types of paint and all that. So we had come to the conclusion we would do a DIY solution. So Dave Holiday organized the acquisition of the paint, and staff came out to paint our crosswalk. So it was very much on the cheap. The results were amazing. Actually, it's still in very good shape. But it would be something that I think we would want to do it in-house again.
And I think that it could be a great community project that we could do with potentially the schools or any interested parties. But to the point that that individual made, it very much is a great way to continue the remembrance of those who gave their life and continue to serve to protect our rights and freedoms.
That is it. Thank you.
Okay, other business, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Going back to Councillor Jameson's point, the trains are slowed. Yes, I can attest to that. There are also electric ones on, and supposedly they're not tripping all the signals properly. So it's another reason why they've asked them to slow down, to make sure it trips. But also to your point, if you slow the traffic, people aren't getting from A to B fast enough. So are they trying to sell another line? Anyways, we'll leave that alone. And to the operations, I'd like to thank them for the work on Maple Grove Road, the brushing that has happened over the last little while. The road is much safer, and I've had some comments to that effect. So thank you very much for that great work, as always. And I'll look after the other issue that we may have. I'm also participating in the Santa Claus Parade coming up the November 30th, 5:30, just to put that down. Also at the fairgrounds, Santa is going to be there. They've asked me to come in there. South Alley Holiday Market is happening on November 15th, which is a nice, fun thing. Another one I'm going to participate in, as well as the Rotary Park, December 8th in Gann, and the Lions in the Park at 15th. A lot of Christmas stuff and a lot of celebrating of a great holiday event. And that's it for me.
Okay, I have no other hands up. One last thing on other business. So Roma is coming up at the end of January. I will be attending, and have we got the list of those that are the others that are attending from? No, we haven't got our other delegates. I'm attending on behalf of the county. Having said that, I wanted to bring it to council's attention. SMT will be meeting tomorrow to talk about issues we may want to have delegations at Roma for. So if there is any burning issue that any member of council would like us to press with the provincial government at Roma, please feel free to email our senior staff and we will try to put together a request. Whether we get it or not will remain to be seen, but I will be there anyways. So if depending on who else may end up being there, if we get an audience with the minister, then we will move forward. We can try for another infrastructure delegation like we had at AMO. And the other one was the cemeteries and high-speed internet. So I was involved in the high-speed internet delegation with Minister Surma regarding the pocket down at the southeast part, which joins up with Maori-town, that's been totally abandoned by the reverse auction in the provincial government. So we are actively working with Infrastructure Ontario to try to figure out how to piece that one back together. So they awarded somebody in the auction and then they abandoned it and said they're not going to move forward with the project. So,
Which one, Mallory Town?
so it's the southern part of a good portion of Maoritown, like almost all of it, whatever got the reverse auction there. And I'd have to get the mapping from Mayor Haley, but it extends into Rockport. I think ExploreNet was the one who was supposed to do it, and they basically have orphaned it and said they can't get to it. So go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I think Bell's running fiber right now down County Road 2 coming out of Mallory Town, and they're also doing line drops on telephone poles for, it looks like, connection to houses at some point in time. And then they're going to hang a left and go down LaRue Mills Road, or that's where it looks like it's starting.
So that's where
So-
Brock Grell is sitting in his seat, very patiently waiting for that line to be attached.
Something wasn't abandoned because there's been work going on there for almost a year.
I think it's further, it's more further north than the Parkway. And it's where Mallorytown kind of comes in to our township.
I have a friend up there who now has 1.8 gigabytes of service
Oh.
direct to the house.
So I think, yeah, I was asked to be part of the delegation because they didn't want it to go unnoticed that there's still people, it's mainly Mallorytown. It's just touching on ours. So I was there for moral support. But it comes down to the fact that the reverse auction, be what it may, as we all anticipated, it would not be perfect procedure, if you will. It's moving forward, so we shall see. Okay, so anybody who wants to, if there's an issue specifically in regards to any of our municipal challenges, whether it be roads, bridges, rec, everything under the sun, the ministers will be at Roma and available for delegation. Excuse me. So with that, I will ask for any notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? I have no notices of motion. Mayor's update, pretty scant this week, but important. Obviously, November 11th is Remembrance Day. We have a number of ceremonies happening in the area. Lansdowne, Lyndhurst, Sealy's Bay, Rockport, Mallorytown, Gananoque. So there is something for everyone, no matter what part of the municipality that you're in. I know that a number of our members here at council will be in attendance. We try to spread ourselves out. The nice thing about the Rockport ceremony is that it happens at 1 o'clock. So we usually get to do that one after the other one that we might have done at 10:30. So please go online and look for the closest one to you. Please pay your respects to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, but also continue to serve to protect us. Another reminder, it's hunting season. Please, please, please be very careful out there. Not just your person, but your vehicle, because there are animals on the move. And I was unfortunately struck by one not too many years ago and rode off a brand new car. But just keep your eyes peeled and for the hunters as well as the animals that are on the move. And lastly, no real connection to this township, but I think it's important to make a point of recognizing that Canada lost an amazing champion who was brave and who went to a place that many people and politicians for years had not gone. Murray Sinclair passed away. He was a lawyer. He was a senator. He was a dedicated advocate to truth and reconciliation, and he was the one who led that for Canada. What I think I find most intriguing about the man is that he started off wanting to be a lawyer and then wanting to be a politician, and then he quickly realized that serving on the bench, he ended up becoming a judge and then becoming a senator, and then using his platform as senator to pursue truth and reconciliation. All that being said, knowing that it would take probably 7 generations to come around, but that if we didn't take the steps originally to start that process, that it would never happen. So we're appreciative as Canadians for his dedication to that process, and may we always recognize that we can do better. So With that, I will go and put the motion on the floor to move in camera, and then we will take a 5-minute comfort break. And we'll stay here in chambers. We will close the doors. Moved by Councillor Grow, seconded by Councillor Kelman, that council adjourned to go in camera in order to discuss items that relate to in-camera session minutes, September 9th, 2024 and October 7th, 2024, in regards to labor relations and employee negotiations. Any questions on the motion?